Cordial's WSST, because local matters.
The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors have been proudly serving the people of this community since 1918. Service is our motto. The poor, the rich, the middle class, and all are given the best of care and attention at all times. You have the privilege to select what you want. In your time of need, contact the capable, the competent, and the dependable staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home, who is genuinely concerned with your care. At J.W. Williams Funeral Home, you are aptly served by the proprietor president, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, who continues the traditions and values set forth by the past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams. Your announcers for the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Sunday morning program are Deacon Arthur L. Parker, Reverend Isaac H. Owens, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, Minister Frankie Harmon, Ms. Sandra Johnson, and Deacon Earl Clark, Jr.
Thank you, and good morning, friends. We come to you this morning to bring announcements, dedications, and songs. We certainly hope that your day may be brighter after listening to our program. The family of retired educator Mrs. Gloria Dean Henderson Martin of Pinehurst, Georgia. The family of Mr. Eddie Lee Palmer of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mother Rosie May Hubbard of Vienna, Georgia, would like to thank their many friends for the food, the flowers, the condolences, and all other expressions of sympathy and kindness shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. Retired educator Mrs. Gloria Dean Henderson Martin, age 71, of 9310 Highway 41 South, Pinehurst, Georgia, died Tuesday, November 3rd at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for retired educator Mrs. Gloria Dean Henderson Martin was held Sunday, November 8th at the Dooley County High School Football Stadium in Vienna, Georgia. The burial followed at the Henderson Johnson Family Cemetery in Pinehurst, Georgia. The Reverend Jerry Sanders, pastor of the Bethlehem Baptist Church of Doolin, Georgia, officiating. Survivors include 3 living and devoted children, Mr. Sean Nicholas Martin, Mrs. Catrice Taylor and her husband, Mr. Sean Taylor, and Mrs. Courtney Hinkle and her husband, Mr. John Hinkle. 4 adoring grandchildren, Jalen, Jakari, Amari, and Tajay. A beloved brother, Mr. Herbert Henderson Jr., and his wife, Mrs. Frankie Henderson of Atlanta, Georgia. 3 loving sisters, Mrs. Lenora Spivey of New Jersey, Ms. Mercy Dean Mathis and her husband, Mr. Lonnie Mathis, and a host of other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Retired educator Mrs. Gloria Dean Henderson Martin, age 71, of 9310 South Highway 41, Pinehurst, Georgia. Mr. Eddie Lee Palmer, age 54, of 109 North Bass Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, November 5th, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Eddie Lee Palmer was held Wednesday, November 11th, graveside at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Elder Darrell Leggett, pastor of the Cordele Institutional Church of God in Christ, officiated. Survivors include his loving and devoted parents, Mother Cora Lee Palmer of Cordele, Georgia, and Deacon James Palmer Jr. and his wife, Mrs. Ozzie Palmer of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved children, Mr. Omar Lawson of Ashburn, Georgia, Mr. Maurice Lewis of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved grandmother, Mrs. Manny Pearl Sanders of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved sisters, Mrs. Mary E. Coleman and her husband, Mr. Raymond Coleman, Miss Virginia A. Harvey, and Miss Brenda L. Palmer, all of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved brothers, Mr. Edward J. Palmer and his wife, Mrs. Mary Palmer of Vienna, Georgia, Mr. Willie J. Palmer and Mr. Johnny B. Palmer, both of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved aunts and uncles, Mrs. Frances Thickpen and her husband, Mr. E.J. Thickpen of Parkland, Florida, Mrs. Maddie Eva Mason and her husband, Mr. Jeff Mason of Cordele, Georgia, Mrs. Virginia Harris and her husband, Mr. Ronald Harris of Centerville, Georgia, Mrs. Earlene Shorter and her husband, Mr. Johnny Shorter of Arabi, Georgia, and Mrs. Jessie Sanders and her husband, Mr. Clarence Sanders of Cordele, Georgia. A host of nieces, nephews, cousins, to include Mrs. Michelle Palmer, Miss Shalonda Palmer, Mr. Jaylene Williams, Mrs. Vontrice Mapp, and Mrs. Vanessa Harvey, and a host of other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Eddie Lee Palmer, age 54, of 109 North Bass Street, Cordele, Georgia. Mother Rosa Lee Darby Herbert, beloved church mother of the Travelers Rest Primitive Baptist Church of Oglethorpe, Georgia, age 89, of 212 9th Street, Vienna, Georgia, died Monday, November 9th at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mother Rosie Lee Darby Hubbard, beloved church mother of the Pilgrim Rest Primitive Baptist Church, was held Saturday, November 14, graveside at the Vienna City Cemetery in Vienna, Georgia. Her pastor, Elder Alonzo Austin III, pastor of the Pilgrim Rest Primitive Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mr. Alexander Royal and his wife, Mrs. Catherine Royal of Camilla, Georgia, and Mrs. Tommy Jean Russell of Baltimore, Maryland. Her loving and devoted grandchildren, Miss Felisa Arlo of California, Mrs. Latasha James and her husband, Mr. Roderick James of Albany, Georgia, Mr. Marquise Field and his wife, Mrs. Shanitra Fields of Vienna, Georgia, Mr. Sean Russell and his wife, Mrs. Lakissa Russell of Baltimore, Maryland, and Mr. Jablincy Fields and his wife, Mrs. Kenya Fields of Vienna, Georgia. 16 beloved grandchildren, 16 great-grandchildren, her sisters-in-law, Mrs. Linda Johnson, Mrs. Annie Lee Thomas, Ms. Vera Smothers, Mrs. Mary Louise Collier, and Miss Myra Tukes. Her beloved brothers-in-law, Mr. Jet Hubbard and Mr. Tommy Hubbard, many other relatives and friends to include Mrs. Frida Small of Vienna, Georgia, and Miss Marsha Austin of Riverdale, Georgia, survived. Mother Rosie Lee Darby Hubbard, beloved church mother of the Pilgrim Rest Primitive Baptist Church of Oglethorpe, Georgia, age 89, of 212 9th Street, Vienna, Georgia. Again, the family of retired educator Mrs. Gloria Dean Henderson Martin of Pinehurst, Georgia. The family of Mr. Eddie Lee Palmer of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mother Rosie May Hubbard of Vienna, Georgia. Would like to thank their many friends for all of the many kindnesses shown to them during the hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. May God bless each of you is their prayer. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors serving Cordele and Vienna were in charge of each of these arrangements during the past week. And now, it is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcement. Mrs. Orinthia Devon Davis Parker, age 40, of 605 Blackshear Road, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, November 5th, at the Emory University Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. Survivors include her beloved husband, Mr. Derek Parker of Cordele, Georgia, her loving children, Mrs. Africa Putman of Unadilla, Georgia, Mr. Ladarius Davis of Americas, Georgia, and Miss Jacory Moore of Cordele, Georgia. 3 beloved grandchildren, her loving and devoted mother, Mrs. Sheila M. West, and her husband, Mr. Scotty West of Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved brothers, Mr. Reem Davis Jr. of Ashburn, Georgia, Mr. Corey Davis of Lithonia, Georgia, Mr. Sidney Yah of Cordele, Georgia, and Mr. Chad Spivey of Tifton, Georgia. A beloved aunt, Mrs. Mary Frances Davis of Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved godmother, Miss Julia Brown of Cordele, Georgia. Her god sister, Miss Rolanda Hagerbrook of Cordele, Georgia. A host of other relatives and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mrs. Orinthia Devon Davis Parker, age 40, of 605 Blackshear Road, Cordele, Georgia. The walk-up public viewing for Mrs. Orinthia Devon Davis Parker will be held today, Sunday, November 15, from 2 p.m. until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mr. Roy C. Williams, Jr., age 83, of 114 Sullivan Drive, Americas, Georgia, died Thursday, November 12th, at the Phoebe Sumter Medical Center in Americas, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted daughter, Miss Cheryl Mann of Americas, Georgia, his loving granddaughter, Miss Felicia Mann of Americas, Georgia, one great-grandson, Mr. Kevon Ferguson of Americus, Georgia, a host of cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Roy C. Williams, Jr., age 83 of 114 Sullivan Drive, Americus, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Roy C. Williams, Jr. will be held Friday, November 20th at 12 noon, graveside at the Hardshell Cemetery in Unadilla, Georgia. The Reverend William D. Harvey will officiate. The public walk-up visitation will be held Thursday, November 19, from 1 p.m. until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mr. Gary Mitchell, age 54, of 1209 South 15th Street, Cordell, Georgia, died Thursday, November 12th at Navison Health in Macon, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Myra Mitchell of Cordell, Georgia, his loving children, Mrs. Julian Mitchell, Ms. Jura Mitchell, Mr. Jasper Barron, all of Cordell, Georgia, Ms. Jenny Mitchell of Atlanta, Georgia, and Mr. Dominic Mitchell of Iowa. 8 beloved grandchildren, his beloved sister, Miss Cynthia Clark of Fayetteville, Georgia, his beloved and devoted mother-in-law, Ms. Rosa Ford of Cordell, Georgia, his beloved aunt, Miss Mary Pounds of Cordell, Georgia, 4 sisters-in-law, 4 brothers-in-law, a host of cousins to include a special cousin, Mr. Tony Rouse of Abbeville, Georgia, a host of other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends to include a special friend, Mr. Siegel Savage of Cordell, Georgia, survived. Mr. Gary Mitchell, age 54, of 1209 South 15th Street, Cordell, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Gary Mitchell will be held Saturday, November 21st at 11 a.m., graveside at the Hardshell Cemetery in Cordell, Georgia. The Reverend Gain Ford will officiate. The public walk-up visitation will be held Friday, November 19, from 1 p.m. until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mr. Calvin Lester, age 65, of 6446 River Road, Byronville, Georgia, died Friday, November 13 at Navison Health in Macon, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted sisters, Mrs. Minnie Florence James and her husband, Deacon Oscar James of Byronville, Georgia, Mrs. Sandra McKenzie and her husband, Mr. Monty McKenzie of Austell, Georgia, Mrs. Maggie Harris of Mooresville, North Carolina, Mrs. Ella L. Witcher of Jacksonville, Florida, Mrs. Joanne Sutton and her husband, the Reverend Johnny Sutton of Covington, Georgia, Mrs. Martha Lester Harris and her husband, Mr. Sonny Harris of Durham, North Carolina, and Mrs. Frances Gardner and her husband, Mr. Clifford Gardner of Vienna, Georgia. His beloved brothers, Mr. Robert Lester and his wife, Mrs. Bridget Lester of Germany, Mr. Charlie Lester of Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and Mr. Thaddeus Lester of Lilly, Georgia. A host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive Mr. Calvin Lester, age 65, of 6446 River Road, Byronville, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Calvin Lester will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mother Fannie Mae Jones James, beloved church mother of the New Oak Grove Baptist Church of Cordele, Georgia, age 91, of 801 West 19th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Saturday, November 14, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mr. Charlie James Sr. of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Deacon Bobby James and his wife, Mrs. Yvonne James of Cordele, Georgia, Mrs. Patricia Paul, and Mrs. Betty Jean Walker and her husband, Mr. Willie Walker, all of Cordele, Georgia, Mrs. Louise Hicks and her husband, Mr. Timothy Hicks of Vienna, Georgia, Mr. Tommy James and his wife, Mrs. Linda James, and Mr. Sammy James, all of Cordele, Georgia. A beloved sister, Mrs. Bessie Mae Lewis of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 25 beloved grandchildren, a host of great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, a beloved daughter-in-law, Mrs. Connie James of Cordele, Georgia, a host of other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends to include Mrs. Janie Mae Miller, Mrs. Mamie Mapp, Miss Neat Wyndham, and Miss Stillwell survived. Mother Fannie Mae James, beloved church mother of the New Oak Grove Baptist Church of Cordele, Georgia, age 91, of 801 West 19th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mother Fannie Mae James, age 91, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors, serving Cordele and Vienna, are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. Friends, that conclude our funeral notices for this morning. And as always, we do remind you concerning our pre-funeral arrangements planning available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home, with packages available with a single pay, a 3-year pay, a 5-year pay, and a 10-year pay. So please stop by and talk with us concerning your pre-funeral arrangements needs, available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home, and also whole life insurance is available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home.
And now for our announcements. The New Poplar Spring Baptist Church invites everyone to join them each Sunday at 9:45 a.m. for their morning worship service, and then on Wednesday evening at 6:45 for their Wednesday evening worship service. You may join the services via conference call by calling 253-993-3761. Via conference call 253-993-3761. Pastor Johnny Dean is the pastor. The Greater Mars Tabernacle Baptist Church conference call schedule for Sunday morning worship service beginning at 9 o'clock a.m. Tuesday midday prayer service begins at 12 o'clock noon. Thursday prayer meeting and Bible study at 6 o'clock p.m. Conference call number is 229-329-7611. Again, the Greater Mars Tabernacle Baptist Church conference call schedule. Conference call number is 229-329-7611. Mother Lucille Shays is the church mother. Deacon Arthur L. Parker is chairman of deacons. Dr. K.M. Williams is the pastor. The Cordele Crisp Area Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance invites you to join them this evening, Sunday, November 15th at 6 o'clock p.m. for an hour of prayer for our nation and our fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. You may join the prayer call by conference call at 657-390-4570. Again, that number is 657-390-4570. The Cordele Crisp Area Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance Hour of Prayer for our nation and our fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. The Emmanuel Missionary Baptist Church invites everyone to pull up in praise each Sunday at 10 o'clock a.m. The church worship praise, pull up in praise is located at 1818 U.S. Highway 41 North here in Cordele. The Emmanuel Missionary Baptist Church, pull up in praise each Sunday at 10 o'clock a.m. Emmanuel extends to you a very cordial invitation to worship with them today during their pastor appreciation in honor of Reverend Greg and Minister Denise Williams. It will be held today beginning at 10 o'clock a.m. located at 1818 U.S. Highway 41 North, Cordele. For more information, please contact Dr. Ruby Jackson. Reverend Gregory Williams is the pastor. The Little Rock Baptist Church annual Reach Out and Touch Free Thanksgiving Day meal will be served on Thursday, November 26th from 11 o'clock a.m. until 1 o'clock p.m. at the Crisp County Ag Center located at 110 13th Avenue, Cordele. For more information, you may contact Brother Bobby Finn. And because of the pandemic, all meals will be prepared to go, so you may stop by, pick up your meal, and leave. That's going to be on Thanksgiving Day, the annual Reach Out and Touch Free Thanksgiving Day meal, Thursday, November 26th from 11 a.m. until 1 o'clock p.m. The Cordele Crisp County chapter of the NAACP will meet on Sunday, November 22nd at 4 o'clock p.m. at the Blackshear Place. All past members and anyone interested in becoming a member is asked to please attend this meeting. Your voice and your support are needed and will be greatly appreciated. The annual cost for membership is $30 per year. Again, the Crisp County chapter of the NAACP will meet on Sunday, November 22nd at 4 o'clock p.m. at Blackshear Place. All past members and anyone interested in becoming a member is asked to please attend this meeting. Your voice and your support are needed and will be greatly appreciated. And you're invited to come and be a part of this meeting as we're preparing for the upcoming January 5th runoff election here in the state of Georgia. We need all of us to galvanize together that we might come and continue to keep Georgia blue as it is. Our announcements for today.
Certainly, we'd like to thank Reverend Owens for our announcements. And now for dedications. Our first election this morning is dedicated to the following: in loving memory of Mrs. Lily B. Hobbs, who would have celebrated her birthday November 8th. Dedication requested by her beloved daughter, Ms. Mary Trahan, and the entire family, and all the members of the Greater Mars Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church. Of Pastor Dr. K.M. Williams, pause and remember the life of Mrs. Lily B. Hobbs, gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mrs. Daphne Floyd, better known as Dana Armstrong, and would have celebrated her birthday on November 9th. Dedication requested by the Armstrong family. Precious memory lingers still. In loving memory of Mrs. Mary Applin, better known as Jelly, who departed this life November 11, 2012. Also a loving member, Miss Frederica Lewis, who departed this life November 15, 2013. Dedication requested by Mr. Frederick Lewis, the Lewis and Applin family, gone but not forgotten. A loving memory of Deacon Albert Butts Sr., who would have celebrated his birthday on November 14, dedication requested by his beloved wife, Miss Lita Otis Butts of Leesburg, Georgia, his beloved children, Mr. Albert Jr., Ernest, Charles, Irene, James, and Phyllis, the grandchildren, and the entire family, gone but not forgotten. Deacon Albert Butts Sr., deacon of the Mount Olive Baptist Church of Warwick, Georgia. In loving memory of Deacon Eddie B. Mathis, past chairman of the Spring Hill Baptist Church Board of Deacons, who departed this life October 22nd, 2019, and would have celebrated his birthday November 15. Dedication requested by his beloved wife, Mrs. Lily Mathis, the children, his beloved sister, Dr. Ruby Jackson, and the entire Mathis family, gone but not forgotten. Deacon Eddie B. Mathis. In loving memory of Mrs. Maddie Clark, who departed this life November 15, 2011. Dedication requested by her beloved family, gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mr. C. Hart Harmon Sr., who would have celebrated his birthday November 15, dedication requested by his beloved daughter, Mrs. Willie Pearl Reed, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, and the entire Harmon family, gone but not forgotten. Mr. C. Hart Harmon Sr. In loving memory of our beloved Deacon Dave Curtis Jones of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, who would have celebrated his birthday November 15, dedication requested by the Jones family and all of the members of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Baptist Churches, Pastor Dr. K.M. Williams, Deacon Tommy Ford, and Mother Lucille Shazer, and the entire membership. Pause and remember the life and work and service of Deacon Dave Curtis Jones, gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mr. C. Hart Herman Jr., who departed this life November 18, 1978, dedicate and would have celebrated his birthday November 18, dedication requested by his beloved wife, Mother Jessica Kate Harmon, all of the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and his beloved sister, Mrs. Pearl Reed, and the entire family, gone but not forgotten, Mr. C. Hart Herman Jr. In loving memory of Mrs. Thelma Pickens, who would have celebrated her birthday November 16, dedication requested by all of her beloved children, grandchildren, and the entire Pickens and Mumphrey family, gone but not forgotten, Mrs. Thelma Pickens. In loving memory of our beloved aunt, my big auntie, Miss Jerusha Hold, better known to all of us as Big Auntie, and would have celebrated her birthday November 16, dedication requested by her beloved son, Mr. John Arthur Manning, and the entire Manning and Adams family, gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of our aunt again, Mrs. Ora Lee Adams, known to all of us as Aunt T, who would have departed this life on November the 19th, dedication requested by the Adams and Manning family, gone but not forgotten. Mrs. Jerusha Holds, and Big Auntie, and Mrs. Ora Lee Adams, Aunt T, gone but not forgotten. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following. Happy birthday to Akara Armstrong, who celebrated her birthday on Wednesday, November 11th. Dedication requested by the Armstrong family. Happy birthday to Marquise Palmer, better known as Pac-Man, who celebrated his birthday Wednesday, November 11th. Dedication requested by the Palmer family. And happy birthday to Mrs. Rosa McKenzie, who celebrated her birthday Wednesday, November 11th. Dedication requested by the McKenzie family. I think this might be Miss Pumpkin. Happy birthday and many, many more. Happy birthday to Mrs. Rosa Harmon, who celebrated her birthday Monday, November 16th. Dedication comes from her mother, Mother Jessica Kate Harmon, and the entire Harmon family. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following: the Armstrong family, the Montfrey family, the Palmer family, the Hoggebrook family, Miss Mary Kendrick and family, Deacon Dennis Harrison family, Mr. and Mrs. Ricky Harmon and family, Mrs. Mary Frances Davis and family, Mr. Justin Colbert Jr. and family, Miss Shalana Donaldson and family, Miss Debbie Cross and family, Mr. Tommy Glenn and family, Mother Jessie Ezell and family, Mrs. B.J. Ezell and entire staff at BJ's Diner. And Calandra would like to thank you for a dish that you prepared for her school on this past week. Thank you very much. Mother Willie McGill and family, Miss Burrow Patrick and family, Miss Mary Taylor and family, Deacon Zachary, Miss Lavetta Field and family, Mrs. Dorothy Paul and family, Mr. F.D. Lawton and family, Mrs. Willie Mae Leary and family of Hatley, Georgia, Deacon Earl Leary and family, Miss Patricia Leary and family, Mr. Eddie Leary and family, Mr. William Carter, and the entire Carter family of Hatley, Georgia, Miss Pearl Reed and family, Miss Maggie Harmon and family, Mother Jessie Kate Harmon and family, Mrs. Eddie Cooks and family, Mrs. Ethel Fullwood and family, Missionary Clement Jones and family, the Reverend Leonard Boston and family, Mrs. Lily Mae Rockwell and family, Deacon and Mrs. Dan Colson and family, Mr. Johnny and Mrs. Barbara Dennis and family, Miss Lucille McGill and family, Miss Gwen Westbrook and family, Deacon Sammy and Sister Shanice McGill and family, Deacon George and Mrs. Ann Whitehead and the entire Whitehead family, Miss Geraldine Harvey and family, Deacon Eugene and Miss Deborah Williams and family, Miss Lenora McGill and family, Mr. Dravian and Miss Kathy McGill and family, Mrs. Jerry Grant and family, Mrs. Mary Thomas and family, Miss Brenda Webb and family, Miss Betty Webb and family, Mr. Warner Webb and family, Mr. Travis Webb and family, Miss Doris Wise and family, Mr. Johnny and Mrs. Juanita Tarbert and the entire Tarbert family, Mrs. Dorothy Tarbert and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Layfield Buckholz and family, Miss Lucy Baker and family, beloved church mother, Mother Lucille Shazer, age 107 of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Baptist Church, Deacon Dave Chambliss and family, Mr. and Mrs. Jamie Chambliss and family, the family of the late Deacon Johnny O'Cobb of Vienna, Georgia, Stuart Charlie Henry and family, Byronville, Georgia, Mother Atline Lofton and family, church mother of the Little Rock Baptist Church of Araby, Georgia, Mrs. Mattie Mays and family, Deacon Lonnie Clayton and family, the entire Clayton family of Dooley County, Georgia, Miss Brenda Redney and family, Mr. Freddie Bimmer and family, Mrs. Viola Adams and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Lim Wright and family, Mrs. Lynette Ross and family, Mrs. Ida Rose Oliver and family, Mrs. Jean Oliver Burtz and family, Deacon Sammy, Mrs. Fanny Mumfrey and family, Mr. Charlie, Mrs. Ruby Jean Ross and family, Mrs. Cheryl Allen Young and family, Dr. Bobby G. and Mrs. Melba West and family, Vienna, Georgia, Mr. Willie, Mrs. Ann Davis, past mayor of Vienna, Georgia, Miss Christine Anderson and family, Mrs. Margaret Jordan and family, retired educator, Mrs. Hilda Ray and family, Miss Terry Boston and family, the Reverend David Thomas, and all of the members of the Evergreen Baptist Church of Pinehurst, Georgia, Deacon John David Law, Chairman of Deacons, Dr. Christopher West and family, Minister Sharonda Towns and family, Mrs. Shireen James and family, Mr. Simon Feld and family, Mrs. Janet Bell Sanders and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Keith Lewis and family, Mr. and Mrs. George Rocker and family, Mr. and Mrs. Joe Black and family, Mr. Harvey C. and family, Mother Blotty Bill and family, Miss Maddie West and family, Mr. and Mrs. John Leroy Perry and family, the Cantrell family, the Hardwick family, Mrs. Marie Felton and family, Mrs. Bobby Jean Vandro and family, Mr. and Mrs. W.D. King and family, Mrs. Christine Kingdom and family, Mr. and Mrs. Pernell Laitler and family, Dr. and Mrs. Thaddeus Laitler and family, Mr. and Mrs. Dorothy Lamar and family, Deacon Willie C. Kendrick and family, Unadilla, Georgia, the family, Miss Cleo Hagerbrook, Mrs. Cynthia Woodson and family, Rosa Cooper and family, Miss Lily Mae Perry and family, the Mike Hamilton family of Lily, Georgia, Mr. and Mrs. Emerson London family, the Granville family, Mr. Sylvester Granville and family, Mr. Arthur Lawson and family, Mrs. Calvin Baskin Jr. and family, Mr. Frank Thomas and family, Mrs. Molly Williams and family, Miss Shirley Jean Taylor and family, Mrs. Evelyn Thomas and family, Miss G. Lundy and family, Miss Eunice Lewis and family, Mrs. Clyda Mae Dawson and family, Mr. and Mrs. Frank Allman and family, Mrs. Randall Lango and family, Mrs. Minnie Jewel Duhart and family, Mr. and Mrs. Wayne Adams and family, Deacon and Mrs. Willie Sutton and family, Mrs. Nanny Lee Burks and family, Mr. Tommy Roger and family, Mr. and Mrs. Willie Lee Taylor Sr. and family, the Crosby family, Deacon Chester Mike Williams and family, Mrs. Maddie Ruth King and family, Deacon and Mrs. Bruce Kendrick and family, Mr. Roger Duhart and families, Doris Duhart and families, Nora Lee Adams and family, Deacon and Mrs. Freddie Lee Perry and family, and the entire Perry family, Mother Martha Chives and family of Vienna, Georgia, our first selection for this morning. Our next selection this morning is dedicated to the following: Mrs. Ethelene Perry and family, Mr. and Mrs. Clarence White and family, Miss Charlie Mae Peacock and family, Mr. and Mrs. Bobby Anderson and family, Miss Nettie Mae Wise and family, Mrs. Alton Jordan and family, Vienna, Georgia, Mr. and Mrs. Scotty Grant and family, the Clee Cross family, Mr. Clayton Dykes and family, the Charlotte Cheney family, Mr. Harry Bird Jr. and family, Mrs. Carrie Wheeler and family, Mrs. Lucille Brandt and family, Mr. Michael Sanders and family, Miss Lily Brown and family, Mr. and Mrs. Eddie James Walker and family, Byronville, Georgia, the Burks family, the Reverend and Mrs. Lewis Burton and family, Deacon and Mrs. Albert King Sr. and family, the Hazel Clark family, Commissioner and Mrs. Harry Ward and family, Mrs. Ruthie Daniels and family, Miss Viola Green and family, Miss Pearline Roundtree and family, Miss Sarah Coleman and family, Brother and Mrs. James Wise and family, Deacon and Mrs. Johnny Perry and family, Deacon George Jordan and family, Mr. and Mrs. Nathaniel Jordan and family, Deacon Walter Brown and family, Mr. and Mrs. Winston Keaton and family, Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Morrell and family, Mrs. Mary Morrell and family, Mrs. Martha Harris and family, Mr. Manuel Lee Johnson and family, the Lester family, Mr. Curtis Whitfield and family, Mr. and Mrs. Joe Clark and family, Vienna, Georgia, Mrs. S.M.A. Davis and family, Miss Odessa Sheffield and family, Mrs. Benita Armstrong and family, Mr. Edgar Lee and family, Deacon and Mrs. Willie Field and family, Mr. and Mrs. Jerome Jordan and family, Miss Christine Jordan and family, Mr. and Mrs. Willie B. Barnes and family of Vienna, Georgia, Mr. Simon Felder and family, Mr. Rosby Anderson and family, Mr. Mika Harvey and family, Mr. Marcus Carter and family, Miss Tia James and family, Mrs. Jasmine Smith and family, Mr. and Mrs. Jerome Anderson and family, Mr. Justin Ross and family, Mrs. Mary Frances Mathis and family, Miss Jeanette West and family, Mrs. Henry Mae Cherry and family, Mrs. Maddie Sue Bryan and family, Miss Ernestine Woodson and family, Mayor and Mrs. Eddie Daniels and family, Mr. and Mrs. Roosevelt Lucas and family, Mr. and Mrs. Sonny Daniels and family, to my neighbor, Mrs. Theron Jones and family, and the entire Jones and Talbot family, Mother Easter May Byram and family, Mrs. Cheryl Cobb Henry and family of Americus, Georgia, Deacon Joey Clark and family, Leslie, Georgia, Deacon and Mrs. Arthur Robinson and family, Mr. Calvin and Mrs. Rosemary Jones and family. Our next selection for this morning. It is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcements. Mrs. Orinthia Devon Davis Parker, age 40, of 605 Blackshear Road, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, November 5th at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. The public walk-up visitation for Mrs. Orinthia Devon Davis Parker will be held today, Sunday, November 15th, from 2 p.m. until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mr. Roy C. Williams, Jr., age 83, of 114 Sullivan Drive, Americus, Georgia, died Thursday, November 12th at the Phoebe Sumter Medical Center in Americus, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Roy C. Williams, Jr. will be held Friday, November 20th at 12 noon. Graveside at the Hartshell Cemetery in Unadilla, Georgia. The Reverend William D. Harvey will officiate. The public walk-up visitation will be held Thursday, November 19th from 1 p.m. until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mr. Gary Mitchell, age 54, of 1209 South 15th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, November 12th at Navison Health in Macon, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Gary Mitchell will be held Saturday, November 21st at 11 a.m. graveside at the Hartshell Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. The Reverend Gaines Ford will officiate. The public walk-up visitation will be held Friday, November 19th from 1 p.m. until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mr. Calvin Lester, age 65, of 6446 River Road, Byronville, Georgia, died Friday, November 13th at Navison Health in Macon, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Calvin Lester will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. Mother Fannie Mae Jones James, beloved church mother of the New Oak Grove Baptist Church of Cordele, Georgia, age 91, of 801 West 19th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Saturday, November 14th at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mother Fannie Mae James, age 91, beloved church mother of the New Oak Grove Baptist Church, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams funeral directors serving Cordele and Vienna are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. Our next and final selection for this morning is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones were laid to rest during the past week. The family, a retired educator, Mrs. Gloria Dean Henderson Martin of Pinehurst, Georgia. The family, Mr. Eddie Lee Palmer of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mother Rosie Mae Hubbard, beloved church mother of the Pilgrim Rest Primitive Baptist Church of Oglethorpe, Georgia. This selection is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones will be laid to rest during this week. The family, Mrs. Orinthia Devon Parker of Cordele, Georgia. The family, Mr. Roy C. Williams, Jr. of Americus, Georgia. The family, Mr. Gary Mitchell of Cordele, Georgia. The family, Mr. Calvin Lester of Byronville, Georgia. And the family of Mother Fannie Mae Jones James, age 91, beloved church mother of the New Oak Grove Baptist Church. This selection is dedicated to all of the sick and shut-in, to all patients in the local and surrounding hospitals, nursing homes, and rehabilitation centers, to our beloved ministers and their devoted family members, to all retired educators, to the men and women serving in our armed forces, both stateside and abroad, to all veterans and to everyone who listens to our program on each Sunday morning. It's a pleasure for us to bring it to you. Our program goes out in memory of our past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams, to my wife, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, to my son, Jai Wilkerson Parker, and to my mother-in-law, Mrs. Billy Ann Hall and family, to my brother, retired Chief Master Sergeant Norman F. Dexter, and his wife, Dr. Gwendolyn Maxine Dexter, to my sister, Ms. Manny Mae Johnson, better known as Sister Girl, who just celebrated her 80th birthday on November 1st, to my sister, Mrs. Patsy Jackson, and her husband, Jim Jackson of Cordell, Georgia. This election goes out to our dear beloved Ms. Easter May Sanders and family, goes out to my nephew, Deacon Kenneth Smith, program chairman of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church.
Yes, I'm going to walk. Oh, that will keep my way. Oh, child.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We hope you've enjoyed our program. Tune in again on next Sunday morning. In your time of need, contact the competent, capable, and dependable staff at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home.